Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Board of Commissioners Budget Workshop Meeting number 6. Today is Wednesday, August 27th, 2025. It is 4 p.m. City Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Brooks,
Here.
Vice Mayor Kerr,
Here.
Commissioner Taglerini,
Here.
Commissioner McGeehan,
Here.
Commissioner Gabayi.
Here.
All are present.
Public comment. Public participation is encouraged. If you are addressing the commission, step to the podium and state your name and address for the record and the organization or group you represent. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes and do not include any topic on the agenda. Public comment on agenda items will be allowed when they come up. If you would like someone at the city to follow up on a comment or question made at the meeting, you may fill out a comment card with the contact information and give it to the city manager. Comment cards are available at the back table in the commission chambers. Completing a comment card is not mandatory. Do we have any public comment? With no public comment, the first item on the agenda is discussion items, fiscal year 2026 budget workshop number 6, deliverable August 2025.
Mayor and Commission, I'll turn it over to Finance Director Andrew Laughlin.
Great, thank you. Welcome, Commission. So want to just open with just a few opening comments on some of the feedback that I've received, both in public meeting and directly to me, about the desire to have more data on both operating trend and also pulling out kind of one-time capital, non-recurring type expenditures, so that we can see what is our budget for the city, citywide, at a total level, as well as from an operating perspective, pulling out those capital projects, pulling out maybe project-related, grant-related revenue, and then the associated capital projects against them. So I try to do that so we have a lot of data at the front part of just specific schedules that I have prepared for you all to kind of walk through that, so you can see both kind of trending history on historical actuals and then FY26 budget, just so you can see where we are, how much did we spend over the last 2, 3, 4 years compared to what we're budgeting now. So we can see, has our budget grown and blown up tremendously just in the last 2, 3 years? Has it been consistent, stable? Once you take out some of those factors, like a large capital project that can significantly increase the budget from one year to the next. So we're going to go through that. That's section 1, the analysis of cost of operations with multi-year trend. And we'll kind of walk through each one schedule by schedule, just to make sure you all and the public at large has a good understanding of the data that I'm presenting. Then number 2 is our team member listing. I've provided some personnel information in the past based on FTEs, that's full-time equivalent. We have certain positions within the city that are allocated to different departments. So we might be a director that's 30% here plus 70% over here. And so that's caused some confusion and consternation that in this deliverable, I'm just giving you a roster, pure head count of all employees of the city, of both filled and vacant positions. If it's filled, here's their names. If it's vacant, it's vacant. And then you'll know if they're part-time or full-time based on their number of hours that I'm putting in. And then giving you that head count information of all those employees that report to a particular department head. Or head of maybe multiple departments. So we do have some directors that oversee multiple departments. So presented the information in that way that hopefully that's more satisfying compared to some of the FTE information I've provided in the past. Then I just have some of the updated kind of budget schedules for operating and capital budget. I do have one particular page where I have both personnel, and I've got a multi-year trend on that, and I then also added operating, so we can see a lot of years of history. I think that's page 76 in your book. I want to pay special attention to that because I've had that schedule up in the past, but not to the detail that I've then provided here. So I thought that's kind of the recurring theme, that things that you want to see is show me over the past 3, 4, 5, 6 years where expenses have been and what we're budgeting now for fiscal year 2026. So I wanted to provide that information as simply and fairly as I could. And then we'll end on Q&A. And then this will be the last budget workshop. If all looks good, I'll have the same information that we'll put in our entire budget document. So our budget book, that'll have also narrative information, and a lot of this is the schedule that you'll see, but it'll be kind of an entire book for the public consumption. It'll get posted on our website. That'll be in our first public hearing in early September, along with the millage rate that you'll be adopting. But this is intended to be, unless you have a need for another workshop in between, this will be intended to be the last workshop to review those numbers, get your level of comfort. Of course, if you have takeaways and things to say, I want to change this, or let's reduce this expense, or move this over here, I'll take note of that and make those changes so that by the first public hearing, that budget book will reflect any changes that you all have. Sounds good? Any questions, comments going into it? Okay, perfect. So let's start with page 5. So I wanted to give this a very high-level budget trend over the past 4 years. You know, has the budget blown up? Has it doubled in size over the last 3 years? Well, I want to present you factual data. So it's very easy to do. I can pull data from our adopted budget books from fiscal year 23, 24, 25, and 26. They're posted on our website. So there's a page in our budget book that just shows total expenses. So that's that number there, the 37 million, 46 million, 42 million, 47 million. So that's it over the last 4 years. That's total expenses. But then if I pull out capital outlay, because there was a lot of sentiment around, well, what does it truly take to operate the city, irrespective of capital projects that can fluctuate widely from year to year. So I pulled out capital outlay, and then interfund transfers. So interfund transfers, a big example of that is the general fund transfers $6 million to the stormwater fund each year, so that the stormwater fund can make its debt service payment for that Series 2019 debt that was issued for the Area 3s, the Area 5s, et cetera. So that's one example of an interfund transfer from the general fund to the stormwater fund. We also have a lot of interfund transfers from our enterprise funds and some governmental funds, the Archibald Fund, the Building Services Fund, the Sanitation Fund, the Marina Fund, the Parking Fund. This is what we call our overhead allocation capture, right, where there's services and other indirect costs that the general fund departments are performing that benefit the Marina Fund, that benefit the Parking Fund. We have a whole allocation overhead spreadsheet. If you're interested in seeing those details, I can email that to you all as a group so you can review that independently. Feel free to ask me questions. But we take, say, the finance department, right? So the finance department has personnel costs that are 100% charged to the general fund. But we do reconciliation activities, record revenue transactions for parking, for sanitation. So there's some cost that's absorbed by the general fund that other enterprise funds receive that benefit. So we take a certain percentage allocation of those general fund personnel expenses and charge those other funds. And we do that through interfund transfers. We've got a very detailed worksheet that goes through and identifies what those amounts are. At the end of the day, that's just a transfer out of those enterprise funds, marina, parking, sanitation, stormwater, and a few governmental funds, building services fund, Archibald Fund, and transfers into the general fund. Those aren't true expenses of external costs that we're paying to vendors. So I'm eliminating that transfer out activity as well, since it's just ins and outs between funds. So you take that out, you take capital outlay out, that's then your total operating budget for each of the 4 years. 19.6 million in 23, 20.2 million in FY24, 20.8 million in 25, 29.5 million in 26, a huge jump. So then I said, well, what are some of these maybe big non-recurring expenses that are not capital, because they're on the cap, but they're operating, but they're not regular recurring. And so I identified 5 of those. One is fire station repairs. So we had as you all know, not to relitigate, but we had construction issues, settling issues at the fire station. We did get, went through a settlement process, got, proceeds from the contractor. Now we got to spend that money. That's not a capital expense. Those are just repairs that we need to make to bring the facility to its current capacity and normal useful life. We're not extending the useful life of the building, 40-year building, we're depreciating it. We're not building it out, expanding it, we're just trying to repair it, right? So that's an operating expense, but not one that we would regularly recur. So I took that $1.2 million out. The fire station build-out, that's $4.4 million. That's for the Reddingtons. That's revenue that we're receiving from Pinellas, and we're also then paying those contractor invoices. So that's a net neutral to the fire department, to the city in general. So we're incurring $4.4 million in revenue, $4.4 million expense. So there's no net dollars out to the city. So I pulled that out too as a reconciling item. Then the same thing, you've got the Johns Pass dredging costs. We've got state appropriation revenue coming for that, and then we've also got expenses going out for that. That's not normal reoccurring revenue. That's coming out of our Johns Pass Village Department, $8,000 in the general fund. Then you have the replacement of the sidewalk on the jetty. Again, non-recurring. This was a result of the hurricane. Same thing, repairs to Snack Shack, something we don't expect to reoccur regularly. Those are big ticket items, five in total, that if you pull those out, what is then our kind of revised operating budget for the city as a whole? So not only general fund, but all of our city funds and departments, that's $21.8 million. So all in all, if you just look at the budgets for the last 4 fiscal years, there's not a significant difference in the true operating budgets from fiscal year 23 to 26. That's what this schedule is intended to depict. Any questions on that? Okay. If we feel good about that, let's move on to the next page.
Do you want to discuss it?
Sure, we can have some discussion. Any discussion?
Yeah, absolutely. Former Mayor Hendricks is here. That fiscal 2023 line item, the total budget was $37,661,000. The next one was former Mayor Rostek signed on that one. That was $46,946,000. I'm talking about the total. We're now at, last year was $42,780,000, and fiscal year 2026 is $47 million. So it's been presented that we are nearly double what we were. And I'm glad you pulled this together. The operating budget from 2023 to 2026 is roughly 11%. I'm actually surprised it's not more than that, given a significant portion of that is employee raises. And we've done, typically, we've brought them pretty much into compliance based on the study that we just had done. And over my tenure here, that's been typically 5 or 6% each year. So I'm surprised it's actually as low of an increase as 11% over 3 years. That being said, I'm sure when we look at the revenues, I'm hopeful that we've seen at least that amount of revenue. I think we have, without raising our millage rates, just the property values increasing to cover those operating costs. This is exactly what I've been asking you to do, and I appreciate you putting all the time into it.
So do we want to do public comment as we go along through each page or at the end?
I promise it won't be a thing. That's a question.
Are you guys, sorry, you're asking me?
I'm asking you and
Oh,
the commission.
I thought it was
That
meant
you-
for the commission. I'm flexible,
Okay.
whatever you all prefer.
So if the commission is going to comment as we go along, then we're going to have to allow the public to comment as we go along as well. So do we have any public comment?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Doug Andrews, I live in Treasure Island. Andrew, first off, this is an incredible report, and I appreciate, I know the mayor and the vice mayor had a lot to do with extrapolating this out, because, although the first rule of, Italian driving in life is what's behind you is not important. It's really, really important when you're doing budgets to look backwards and kind of take a peek. My only question with this is, if we're playing apples to apples, in 23, 24, 25, are there any where you have a less fire station repair, less this, are there any lesses in any of those years that'll bring that number down? I'm not trying to call anybody out, but if we're gonna do this and we're gonna stack them up like this, is there anything coming out of the operating budget underneath that final line that would bring that number down in accordance to what's up there now? Thank you.
Happy to address that. And the quick answer is I don't have the answer to that, but I could certainly dig into those budget years to see if there were any one-time non-recurring expenditures. I didn't go into that detail on those prior fiscal years. Nothing comes to mind right now, but I'd have to look into the details of those operating budgets in those departments to see if there were similar items to the 5 that I demonstrated in fiscal year 26.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions on that first page?
John Hendricks, 569 Normandy Road. On capital improvements, I was going back through some previous budgets because something I have a question on, and this may not be the time to ask this, and if it isn't, if I need to wait, I'll do that. But concession stand. In 23, we budgeted $100,000 for the concession stand. In 24, we budgeted $50,000 for the concession stand. I think we budgeted something in 25 for the concession stand. I don't see it, but now I see $500,000 proposed to replace the concession stand. So the way we're going to have $1 million concession stand out there. And it's just, I don't understand. I'd like some clarification on that. How did we get to $1 million on the concession stand?
So I just want to remind everyone sitting up here and in the audience that this is not a Q&A. So the commission isn't here, nor is the finance director, to answer any questions from the audience. I did not realize that the audience was going to want to ask questions page by page. So we will do this like we have in the past, or like we always do. Andrew, when you're done presenting whatever section of this as you go through, I'm going to open it up to public comment, and then the commission can have discussion. And if you choose to discuss whatever the public has commented on, we can. I know that the concession stand is going to come up later on in the budget, so there can be questions at that time on that, I'm sure, by us. Are you okay with that? Okay.
Any other comments from the commission or questions on that first page? Okay. So moving on, so then I just wanted to show our FY 2026 operating budget, where we're going to show revenues and show cost of operations and pull out capital and pull out those one-time kind of non-recurring operating expenditures. And let's see what the true cost of operations and revenues related to it are on a fund-by-fund basis. So that's what starts on page 6. And so that line at the bottom is basically considered a P&L, a profit and loss statement. That line at the bottom is your excess if it's positive, or deficiency of revenues over expenditures. So expenses are higher, then that's a negative number. If expenses are lower, then that's a positive number, right? So you can see that for each of the funds, the Archibald, Building Fund, Debt Service, Gas Tax Fund, General Fund, Impact Fee Fund, Local Option Sales Tax Fund. Just some high-level observation. Yeah, our general fund is 2.9 million in the red. It used to not be because we had parking as a department called Parking Enforcement Department as part of the general fund. We've then stripped out that parking revenue. So if you look at some of the results of our enterprise operations, that does more than fund the general fund itself. But we do need, right, what this does depict is we do need those profitable enterprise operations to help fund general fund operating needs. Because on an overall basis, so that's page 6, right? And then if you look at page 7, those are our enterprise funds, right? Which is showing higher profit. 1 million on Marina Fund, 2.7, almost 7 million parking, kind of flat on sanitation, a little less than flat on stormwater, which I would love to see stormwater fund be fully self-sufficient. We are going to be looking at and bringing in a workshop setting in a future date our stormwater fees and rates and what we might want to do there. But then your total there is 3.6 million, quote unquote, profit on enterprise funds compared to 2.9 million. So overall, from just a purely operating perspective, the city's budget revenues do exceed budget expenditures on an operating level, right? Total citywide, comparing your governmental to your proprietary. But this gives a good visibility into, on a fund-by-fund basis, where we stand. Questions or comments on that?
Andrew, I have a
No. I want to do the public first. That way we can discuss any concerns that they have. Please. Do we have any public comment? Okay, now, that way,
That's fine.
the discussions that come from the public don't get left unaddressed.
Perfect. So the general fund, let me back up. The enterprise fund is heavily funded by tourism, is that correct?
Cyclically, charges for services will peak at higher tourist times in the marina and the parking fund. Sanitation, not as much. That's more
I'm just saying,
But parking and marina, I would say, are definitely, those revenues are affected by tourism.
okay. Is there anywhere in the package, I know we had this discussion, I don't know if it's going to be highlighted in a different spot, where we're looking at overall the net value of tourism. Is it a benefit financially to the residents, or is it a financial burden to the residents? I didn't know if this is as close a picture as we'll see in the packet, or have you not really gotten your head around that yet?
So that's not in here. I could provide you a separate deliverable where we can show tourist development taxes collected by Pinellas County tax collector, and it shows the breakout by municipality, where we can see, trending information, ebbs and flows of of tourist development taxes. So we can see, whoa, we got a big jump in March. How does that correlate to, let's say, parking revenue throughout the year? And so we can show in those same, I would venture to guess that those trend lines would be very much similar. And so what would that mean? That means that, yeah, the more tourists that come in, that's higher TDT, tourist development taxes, and that directly correlates to higher parking revenue, maybe higher slip rental, or, various,
Okay. I don't want to get off track. I just thought this was an opportunity to bring that up. Other than that, it looks great. Thank you.
Yeah, so there's, to summarize, there's seasonality in these charges for services. And the question is, can we correlate seasonality by what we know are collected in tourist development taxes, which is a direct result of, the influx of tourism over those peak season, and do we see that direct correlation?
And the parking, yeah.
Yep, and especially, parking in Marina.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So then if no further questions or comments on that, then now we'll just go through kind of a multi-year trend, and we'll do that for revenues and expenses. So this is just some trend analysis. Vice Mayor Kerr, you like to see kind of line graphs, so I try to depict it for you in this way. It can be a little messy because we got a lot of different revenue sources, but this at least gives you a little idea of, okay, what's kind of more flat versus or do we see some more increases and decreases in the different types of revenues, taxes, charges for services, permits, fees, special assessments, et cetera. And then same thing with expenses that might be flat from fiscal year 21 audited through fiscal year 24 audited through fiscal year 26 budget. Didn't include fiscal year 25 actual because we're not done with the fiscal year yet. So I wanted to give you complete year of information. So that's why we went 21 through 24 and then 26 budget. Then starting on page 10 that's that data presented graphically in these line graphs. Now here's the data presented by fund multi-year operating. So you start with Archibald. Archibald consists of charges for services, which is far and away the parking revenue at the Archibald lot, right? So what we know we collected, fiscal year 21, 563,000, then 681,000, then 754,000, then 709,000, and now we're budgeting 672,000, right? Miscellaneous revenues, it's probably a lot of just interest income on our cash on hand, and cash equivalents that are being allocated to Archibald. And then you've got your cost of operations, personnel services. These are salaries and wages, taxes and benefits, group insurance, retirement, either through our defined contribution plan or our defined benefit now that we have our Florida retirement system plan. And then operating expenditures or expenses, that's non-capital stuff, right? It's not a big project that's going to result in a capital asset, an infrastructure asset, a building improvement, or a piece of equipment, or a new vehicle. We're pulling all that out, just the pure cost of operations. So those are repairs and maintenance, professional services, contractual services, departmental supplies, other miscellaneous expenses. Those are your rentals and leases. Those are your typical operating expenses. Debt service, if there is any, and then and that overhead allocation and debt service transfers out. So for Archibald, don't want to belabor that, but I can provide you all with our overhead allocation worksheet that we use to compute what does the Archibald fund owe the general fund for the services and indirect costs incurred by the general fund, like maybe janitorial fees, janitorial expenses, or certain insurance expenses that cover Archibald that general fund pays for. So we'll reallocate some of that overhead and charge Archibald. And so that's your differential, and then there's your profit or loss for Archibald. And then same thing with building fund, right? A bit of a disturbing trend or change on building fund. We've been profitable each year. We've had a nice buildup of fund balance. That's been great for leading up to fiscal year 25 when we then waived permit fees, which was okay for building fund for a time so that we could absorb those operating losses without the sufficient revenue to cover expenses because we had some reserves built up. But we do have an agenda item later in our regular workshop to discuss the permitting fees, today and in the future, so I won't go over that in detail. But then we, also have our FY26 budget with a $674,000 loss. And same thing, debt service fund, that's just paying our debt service on, I think that's Series 2013 debt. That's not too significant, but that comes in through a general fund transfer. And the gas tax fund, that's a small operation there, funded mainly by taxes and state revenue sharing on gas tax. And then the big one, next page, page 12, is your general fund. So that's where we have a lot of different revenue sources. So providing good multi-year trending information. You can see our taxes have been growing each year. And that's mainly fueled by your ad valorem taxes. We have not raised the millage rate, as you know, since 2019 to 2.75. It is stayed at that millage rate. But then why have taxes gone up? Because property values have gone up. But now you're looking, we had 6.682 million in 24 audited. Now we're only looking at 6.614. Our actual assessed valuation has gone down, and we've already talked about why, from those hurricane-affected properties that have reduced building value. So this is a year upcoming that we'll be taking a hit in terms of reduced ad valorem revenues, and that trend has been going up, and now it's going to go down a bit. But we do also realize that's going to be short-term as those properties over time recover, rebuild, and that property structural value will increase, and then overall assessed value will increase. So hopefully a short-term blip in the ad valorem tax revenue radar. And then so that gets you, then you can see your trending information over time from prior year actual, 21 to 24 to 26 budget. And you can see I've pulled out some information and transfers out and in some operating expenses, even in the past. We had some Gulf Boulevard undergrounding, Johns Pass dredging costs. I've pulled those out in prior year audit, prior year and in the budget, since those are those kind of non-recurring one-time. Then you've got the impact fee fund, not much happening there, just basically revenues coming in. We haven't budgeted any projects for that yet. So we're still accumulating revenues in the impact fee fund. Then you've got your local option sales tax fund. And there I do show capital outlay because really that's the whole intention of the fund, is to take in your tax revenue, your penny for Pinellas, the discretionary sales surtax, and use on capital expenditure. So I did include capital there. That's paid through page 13, and then the next pages is the same thing, but on enterprise funds. So we've got our revenue trending information on page 14, and then our expenditure trending information and a line graph on page 15, and then that same multi-year operating trend, revenues from operations, cost of operations per fund. And you can see on page 16, the parking fund has zero balances in FY21 and 22. That doesn't mean that's because we just never collected parking in those years. That means that parking operation was included in the general fund in fiscal year 2022 and earlier, and then we created a separate enterprise fund to specifically capture both parking revenue and related costs in its own fund, in its own enterprise fund, starting in 2023. And same thing in the sanitation fund and stormwater fund. And that then covers kind of that multi-year trend compared to fiscal year 26 budget information by fund. I'll stop at this point to address questions and comments.
Do we have any public comment?
Sure. Hey guys, Doug Andrews, Treasure Island. Once again, I got to commend Andrew because I think that this is probably the most concise and best pieces of information which are easier for you to decipher and to kind of make decisions on. Just let me pull you back real quick to page 8 and page 9 of the graphs that we're looking at. Guys, if you're not looking at these and these aren't blowing your minds, then you're looking at the wrong things. You're seeing, and Andrew's 100% correct. When you see the two top lines, and yes, the tax revenue is going to settle off. It may settle off a little bit more. I think we all know that we're going through a rebuilding process, and I don't know if anybody really knows what's at the end of the tunnel, but again, you can't predict outwards. Your charges for services, if you look at that line from 2022, that is a direct line down, and that is your revenue for the services that are being charged. And not only does it just go down, it's just flat after that. That's pretty concerning, because when you flip over to the next page on that graph, this is where it gets really crazy, because you're going on what would be a probably typical projection from 21, 22 to 23. But look at your blue line, which is your personnel services. So what we're paying employees and benefits and things along the lines of that. That is heading straight upwards. And it's not that in 2026 it's coming down. It's continuing that upward trend. And your second one, and then your expenditures are going up. So your revenues, by chart, the page before, are flat or going down, and your expenditures are going through the roof. I understand we've got the next couple of pages, you got enterprise funds, you got things along the lines of that. But I think what ends up happening is you then turn, so those are your two mind blowers. But if you turn to page 12, and I didn't really want to get into specific numbers because it's hard to follow. It's better to go percentages and look at it. But with specific numbers, especially on page 12, you can see where all of this is played right out for you. And if you look at the bottom with cost of operations, you're looking at your personnel line at 3.578200 in 2021, and then you look to the 2026 budget, and you're looking at $6,749,810. Guys, that's a massive increase over the course of 4 or 5 years? It's crazy. And then if you take a look backwards, and I didn't do that for this exercise, it's not worth going backwards yet. But if you look, has the city really changed in the last 10 years? Yes, there's been some different things that have gone on. Obviously we had hurricanes, we had things like that, but all of this can't be accounted towards the hurricanes. You're looking at just enormous increases across the board, and then your expenses right below it from 3.9 million to 6.6 million. That's just not inflation. Okay? There's a lot and I'm not saying you're going to answer all the questions there to start pointing fingers. It's this person's fault, this person. But what you got to do between now and the end of the month, when the budget's got to be approved at the end of September, we need answers for this, or we need some cuts in these budgets, because truthfully, we don't have the option that the federal government has. We can't go $33 trillion into debt. Just not possible. Okay? They'll shut us down, and the state will come in and run us. But, everything's rosy when things are good. What we're seeing is the other side of this equation now. If the trends that you got, it's right here in front of you. If the trends you've got that are on paper continue, those aren't the right lines. Those aren't the right directions for those lines to be going. So my personal opinion, the budget needs to be scrubbed. It needs to have a real close look at it. It needs to go back a little bit. And, you guys are going to get to it in a minute here, but you're also looking, and I kind of, and he covered a couple more areas, not of huge concern, and I don't really take budgeted numbers all that seriously anyway, but you're looking at a couple of budgeted numbers on page 16, for example. You see the marina line for the charge for services, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and now we're budgeting for 2026 at 1.864. There could be perfectly logical explanation for that. Prediction in gas going, unleaded fuel going up, something along the lines of that. But that's a pretty massive increase if you think about it percentage-wise over the course of that time. And if you don't hit that budget number, then your balanced budget doesn't work at the end. And we're making adjustments at the end. Parking, that looks a little bit more realistic, but you're going in just the couple of years that you have, 2.8, 2.7, bumping it up to 3.6. That may be because of the extra dollar increase. I don't know when exactly that took place. But I don't remember budget year, fiscal year 2024 being a bad year, right? The hurricanes didn't hit until end of September. But just got to keep your eye on that. When you get to the personnel, you're going to see why your personnel line has gone. You know, I could, from 2016, you're looking at 59 FTEs here. The budget line that you're going to be looking at today is going to have you. Well, there's a couple of different numbers in the budget. I'm not blaming anybody, but it could be anywhere from 89 to 102 or 3, counting you guys. From 59 to that number, my question is, has the city grown to the extent? I mean, if you look at the census, we've gotten smaller. Has it grown to the extent that we needed another? Well, I believe the increase was 92% or something like that. It's in the pages coming up, but you'll see it here in a minute. But something you got to keep an eye on, guys, because the trends can't keep going in the way they are, and for us to remain fiscally sound. Thank you.
Do we have any additional public comment? Commissioners, comments?
Personally, I'd like to thank Mr. Andrews for bringing this up and presenting his opinion. It's my understanding that these lines, these expenses going up tremendously have to do with the fire department, the adding of the Reddingtons. Correct me if I'm wrong. And so you have your revenues going up to offset that. It's not really a cost, an additional huge percentage cost to the residents. It's being offset, and the chief could speak to this as need be, but validate what I'm saying or not, Mr. Laughlin.
To provide validation, I'd probably, if we want to focus on personnel, let's look at personnel costs by department instead of by fund, where you can really see a more detailed breakout. So that would be on page 76.
Because I mean, to your point, it would be concerning, but I don't, the years that I've been going through this, it's very, if you look under the hood, I mean, we know that we haven't grown the number of hours, the number of personnel in the city staff, with the exception of the contracts with the fire and negotiations with the police. Those are probably our biggest. But with the Reddington fire, I think it's skewing these numbers tremendously. And those graphs are, I think that's what we're looking at. So.
It's coming up. He's got it.
Go ahead.
Any additional comments? I do think from conversations that the fire department is skewing because we're going to gain a number of employees. We've increased our fire staff over the last few years, several years. We're also going to increase again for the Reddingtons. We added a medic truck, which we added staff to be able to run that truck. So that's part of, I think that's where it makes it very convoluted unless you really dig, to understand the full budget, because there are so many other things that are included, right? Exactly what you're saying.
That's my point.
Makes it, yes.
But if you look on the other side of the ledger, we're also bringing in the revenue to offset that. So as far as the residents are concerned, their expenses are basically inflation.
Correct, because once the Reddington station is open, there'll be revenue that comes into the city to operate that station, which will increase our revenue on our books.
Same way on the capital side.
Correct. So there's offset. If you totally remove the fire department out of our budget, just took the fire department completely out, didn't include the fire department for the last 4 years or 5 years.
It'd give you a better view.
It'd give you a better view, because sometimes when we add staff, we don't see the benefit of the dollars until the next year and all of those kinds of the way that the things work out. Would that be a fair assessment, Andrew?
It would, and I think if you just look at the data on page 76, where you can then see that multi-year trend by department, you can see which departments have the kind of the greatest fluctuation. I know it's a smaller table. There's a lot of data I'm packing in there, but instead of me just showing you by fund, I think this is a good representation of what have our personnel costs, where have they gone over the years, department specific. So yeah, I mean, fire, if you look, that's department 4,000, 1.55, 1.59, 1.8, 2.4, 2.8 budgeted, 3.5 budgeted. So that's where you're going to, and then same thing on just the FTE increases, from 15 to almost 22 in fire. And again, expansion of operations. Now we're going into the Reddingtons, we're hiring up for that. And so there's reasons for a lot of these. Like you take the top line city manager, we've got, 444 for the last 3 years, or including 25 funded and then 26 proposed as 5. And then the cost reflects that as well. That's a public information officer that we now have budgeted based on your feedback to include that position. So each one can, kind of has a story to tell, and you can see where some have just kind of been flat, and then some have had FTE, body increases, and then the costs typically follow in the same vein. But even those that have had kind of steadiness in FTEs, you can still see increased in cost because salaries, wages have gone up. We also had an FRS conversion in our retirement plan. You've got overtime. So, things happen within departments that can cause the actual cost to go up as well.
Absolutely.
So if we want to scrutinize, why is personnel, then let's look at this, and then we can focus on a department and talk about it. But I want to just give you all the data so you can see for yourself, okay, HR, we used to have a body there, now we don't, okay. Information technology, then that got absorbed in the city manager department. So, things that you can clearly see and hear on a department by department basis. And then to the extent that you have more questions, we can give you then,
I just
further
think that,
data by department.
And again, I applaud Mr. Andrews being here at a budget meeting. That's not common. I don't know if we've ever had anyone come to our budget meetings. But there's a story in the public right now, I feel, because it's come to some of our public meetings, that the budget's out of control. So we need to be able to provide that, not in a detailed graph, or no one's going to, from the public, is going to dig into all those numbers and try to understand everything. They're going to look at just a 30-second clip. So we need to be able to easily show where we are. And that was the whole point of this page number 5 that you put together, where we are on our operations over the years. And we can look at capital outlays from there. But I think the whole fire has made a public display of the budget as being that we've just lost control. And I don't believe that's the case. And I'm just trying to get that story out. And if there's certain line items that we need to consider, I'm open for any of that. That's why we sit here.
So if you look into the budget, the revenues and other inflows, like Andrew stated earlier, is the $4.4 million from the county. It comes in, and then it goes out.
And it washes right out, yeah.
And when you do that, it breaks our budget down to $1.6 million. That's the lowest budget out of all 18 fire departments in Pinellas County. So I think, it does look skewed at on the surface looking at it, but honestly, I feel like we are being very good stewards of these residents' tax dollars.
Absolutely, and that's the story that I want to make sure that it's being heard.
And you can even cut it down even more if you take out the EMS funding, 810,000, and then the Reddington contracts, another 317. So it's even actually less than that. At the end, are you at the end?
We'll have another public comment at the end.
Any other questions, concerns, comments on what I've presented thus far, or just should we jump right into team member listing? Okay. Nothing I really need to go over in detail on team member listing. That starts on page 18 and goes into then page 19 on the roster of employees. So these are your position titles and then first name and last name. So you can see what's been filled, and there's probably been some activity where this might even be outdated as of just a couple weeks ago, where we had vacant position and maybe filled, or we had a filled position and this person's terminating. But this is the best information as of a week or two ago when it was prepared. So you've got, what I did is just put the name and title of the, call it, department head, department director, or individual responsible over one or more departments, and then the team members that individual has under him or her. So starting with your city manager, there are those 4 positions, city clerk, 2 positions, finance director, 3 positions, community development, 15 positions, so on and so forth. And that gives you then the position title, first name, last name, and then number of budgeted hours. If they're 2080, that's a full-time. If they're 1040, that's part-time, half the year. If they're 520, that's like seasonal, so just working in the summer, for example. So just wanted to prepare that information for you all so you have it, but nothing more that I have to expand on and discuss it, but if you all have any, or we can start with public comment. If you have any questions, comments, we can talk through it.
Do we have any public comment?
Hello, Doug Andrews. Hey, first and foremost, I didn't ever bring up the fire department. And Ray, I'm not offended by it, but I am well versed in what's going on in Clint's department. If Andrew, can you go backwards to the chart you had up there a second ago? Because I do know that there is a $2 million justified increase from 2021 to the 2026 proposed budget in the fire department. But that's not the only area that you're seeing that is showing major increases, right? I mean, look at your first line. So you got the city manager 329 to 601, community development 314 to 566. And obviously you scroll down to fire and it's 1.5. It's almost exactly $2 million, like I said. Look at the bottom line numbers, 5.1 to 9.9. That's $4.8 million, and fire takes $2 million of that. So there's $2.8 million that has been increased in the budget since 2021. Okay, take fire out of it. And I never bought up fire, by the way. I just want to, I've got the greatest respect for our firemen and for Clint. I would never even bring this up. I know exactly how hard he worked on that. He's been working on it for a long time. But if you look at these other areas, you can't just blow it off and say, oh, okay, it's just fire. We'll just dedicate it all to fire, and that's where all the money is. The public outrage wasn't caused by me. I never said that, the budget was $46 or $48 million. What I'm saying is it's got to be, if you're looking at these trends, you got to look at them carefully, because trends, if they're not stopped, continue. So I just want to make sure that I'm on the record saying never once did I bring up the fire department. I am well aware of what they're doing, and it's just $2 million out of $4.8 million that we're talking about. of the increase. And you can't just go, oh, okay, it's just that, or, oh, it's just the hurricane. Look at those other numbers. That shows you exactly everything right there. Look at the increase in staff from the fire department, six of those people, and we're talking in 5 years, okay? There's an extra 10 people from 72 in 2021 to now, okay? You go back to 2016, there were 59 people working here at FTEs. The city is growing faster than its revenues. That's what I'm trying to point out. Nothing more, nothing less, and I'm not pointing fingers. Thank you.
Any additional comments? Andrew?
And no other comments, questions from the commission on the team roster? If none, then the next section is really just those same budget schedules that you're used to from previous workshops, starting on page 23. Again, don't want to go over these page by page in vast detail. It's more if you had any questions on any particular pages, then I can address. So that's page 23, 24, summary of revenues and expenses by fund. I love my page 25. I go over this with you all each workshop. So this is what I call my budget summary by character. So now we are including in both all sources of revenue, operating and capital, and then the differential is what we're going to need to pull from reserves to fund the shortfall by fund, or what we have available, or what's in excess that will be available for the future to add to reserves. So for example, this is on page 25, and so if you look at Archibald Park Fund, for example, so total revenues and other inflows, 694,700, and then with the capital outlay projects, 2,218,900. So then we would need to pull from reserves 1.5 million. Same thing with building fund, pulling from reserves 850,000. Versus other funds, we would be adding to reserves, like the Marina Fund, we'd be adding 833,000 to reserves if actual expenditures mirrored budget for budgeting for Marina, for parking, 2.6, 2.7 million that we'll be adding to reserves for parking. So that's just how you translate this table on the inflows, which is the total sources, which includes all revenues and other inflows, plus what we might need to pull from reserves, versus uses, personnel, operating, capital outlay, debt service, transfers out, and then if there's an excess, what we'll then use to increase reserves for the future. And then on page 26, I prepare that kind of same table, but then I pull out capital outlay. So it's an operating focus first, and then I say, okay, let's add in other sources, capital outlay, and other uses to get to total. So they had that first, about halfway through that table, this is on page 26, total revenues and then total expenditures less capital outlay. So you can see the differential there before you dig into capital outlay and then other sources and other uses. And then the next pages, we get and dig into the general fund details, general fund revenues, and then expenses by department. Then we do the same thing for other funds. This is the same kind of information, includes goals and accomplishments by department, and then historical spend, 25 budget, 25 what we project will be actual at the end of the year, or just our projection, and then 26 budget. Then, again, some additional information I've provided in this deliverable then is at page 76. So that gives you FTE information over a multi-year historical trend, personnel costs, wages, taxes, and benefits for those same departments. And then I even added a table below that for just operating expenses by department over that multi-year trend history from 21 actual through 24 actual, and then 25 budget and 26 budget. So you can look at not only wages, taxes, and benefits trending by department, but you can also look at what they've been spending on operating by department over that multi-year time frame. And I excluded a couple things, like in Public Works Admin, I excluded Gulf Boulevard undergrounding from prior years, since those are one-timers, and then I excluded the Snack Shack renovation in the Archibald, also one-timer. Then the last piece is just the historical capital outlay. Just to show you on this page 77, we've kind of wildly fluctuated in our capital outlay expenditures. This is actuals, right? We've sometimes budgeted quite a bit, but actuals turned out to be significantly less. Like in fiscal year 26-17, we expended $5.5 million. In fiscal year 23, we only expended almost $900,000. So it's been, has not been a consistent trend, to say the least, on capital outlay. And then the next pages are just the capital improvement plan. So page 78, our capital improvement plan for just this next year, nicely summarized by kind of project name and the fund that's associated with it. And then starting on page 79 is a multi-year capital improvement plan. Same thing, fund information, the account number, then the project title, project description, and what that looks like over a 5-year time horizon from fiscal year 26 budget to all the way out to fiscal year 2030. And so that covers it. I've got nothing further from my workshop deliverable. So just to summarize, if there's anything we want to adjust, I can prepare that for the first public hearing. Otherwise, if all this looks good, I can have a budget book prepared with narrative at the front, a lot of the same information in our budget document that upon adoption will then get posted to our city's website. And we'll go through that first reading and voting and approval process for both the millage rate and the budget in that September meeting. And we'll do that twice. First meeting in September and then the second meeting later in September. Questions, comments first from the public and then commission?
Do we have any public comment? Commissioners?
I would just like to say great job. Very thorough. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, very comprehensive report. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm good.
Perfect.
That's it? Is that it, Andrew?
Nothing else from me.
Additional? I guess I do have a question on the capital improvement plan for fiscal year 2026. All of the items that are on that list, they're not on the multi-year plan, right? Am I missing that? Did I miss that when I was looking at it?
So I have on page 78, that is just for fiscal year 26, and that total is $13,740,000. And then on the next pages is the multi-year plan, which includes all those in fiscal year 26 plus future years. That totals on page 82, and the 2026 column is $13,740,000.
So I don't see. Oh, okay. So it's, let me find it. I see now. I was looking for, I was looking for recreation, and it's listed under local option sales tax.
Yeah, that means yes,
Because
funded out of
it was
there.
brought up earlier about the basketball enclosure. I mean, I know that it's on here, the concession stand, and maybe the basketball enclosure wasn't brought up, but the concession stand was. And we haven't received anything to approve. This is just a placeholder for monies, because we haven't approved any designs or anything like that. It's just, correct, Jay?
Yes, I actually looked up numbers when that was mentioned. So it was budgeted the previous 2 years for design. We didn't have any sort of agreement. So the biggest challenge, obviously, is when this project is hopefully built, it's going to be a very significant portion will be grant funded. At least that's the attempt with Visit St. Pete Clearwater and other funding sources. So that funding window hasn't been open up until last year when it was open for a month. So missed opportunity, but we've had discussions about the future. So from a planning perspective, we do have money budgeted this current fiscal year it was $100,000. And we have got a design quote or design agreement with Colliers, who is one of our continuing service agreement providers, for $53,025. To date, we have spent $13,433 or $14,430 on design. That's gotten 2 of the 3 design aspects of the initial project. So, and then we've got a review that's taking place, and that's part of the community meeting that we've looked at for next week. And then continued conversation on that, and that will lead us into the last iteration before it comes back to you all for eventual discussion on what the next steps are. And then it'll also be part of our funding applications that we search out and find.
So I have a question then. I did see on Facebook yesterday I just saw it yesterday where Recreation posted to have a public meeting next week. And I asked Robin about it. Do you have designs that you're going to present at that meeting?
Yes, I have it.
Are you going to present to the commission or show us what you're presenting?
So yes, the purpose of that is to have individual. We've had a few conversations, and I feel like I've shown some of you one of the first design and some of you the second design. So we're kind of in a middle place. But I'm not going to make any suggestions back to Colliers without speaking to the public and then speaking to each of you on the feedback from the public and making sure that we're all on the same page.
So are you planning on presenting what you have, like showing it to the public that this is what you're thinking, or are you, I'm just curious how you're going to, I'm going to come next week because I'm interested to see it.
Absolutely, and that's what we would love to see. So so the designs, again, I've got my vision for what we're looking for, and I've gotten some feedback from people. And then, of course, the Colliers, their designers always have their design of what they think because they want it to be proud of it too. So there's a middle point in there. But what we're presenting to the public next week is it's just a general floor plan of what the layout is hopeful to be. And then I want to make sure that what we're presenting from a beginning standpoint is sufficient for public use. And then also in that meeting to say, hey, what else? What would you use it for if you were to come here? So we want to make sure that it has as many of those aspects as the public's use, because I'm not building something, or hopefully not building something that is going to sit empty. That's not our purpose. I've already got 20 uses for it in my mind, but I'd like another 20 from the public to show that it has a purpose and it has a need and it continually be used. So the county's had some feedback, obviously the restrooms being one challenge. Our tournament directors have had some feedback. Our concessionaires have had feedback. So residents, we need their feedback to make sure they're using it, whether it's for their cardio drumming class or a quilt show, whatever. Something will have a use for it for everybody. And then once we get that feedback, I want to make sure that each of you understands kind of where it's coming from and why every aspect is needed. I'm not just going to have stuff to have stuff. It will have a purpose and moving forward.
So I have a couple comments.
Yes.
So one of them is kind of on topic but off. At the conversations with the mayor, the resident who asked about pickleball. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I know we have pickleball, but I had a question that I had intended to email you and I just hadn't yet. Can the net for the tennis court, do they make a net that folds down and makes it, and you can fold up for tennis and down, you know what I'm saying? Like I don't know. I don't play pickleball, so I don't understand that the net is different than tennis, but I heard it. And so right away when she said it, I was thinking, well, I wonder if they make one that's kind of multi.
So that they have net adjusters, and both groups hate it.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. The other thing that I want to bring up is, and this is not specifically for you, but it's in general for the commission. And this was brought up in a public meeting. In years past, we've budgeted for things like boat docks, and talked about and all of those sorts of things. And Jay worked and did a lot of work on a dog park presentation to the commission. And in conversations that we've had in the past, when the commission asks the staff to go out, or the staff brings something to the commission, and then we support them going out and getting pricing and doing all of this legwork and all of this work on something, and then it comes back to us and we don't follow through on it. And I say we loosely because not necessarily us, but just the commission as a whole. I think it would be warranted for us to try to revisit and understand why did we do all of the work on a dog park and spend all of the money and then didn't spend the time to support staff in what they put before us. And I'm not talking about spending taxpayer dollars, but spending other dollars to make a dog park happen, whether it would be in phases. I was at the dog park this morning talking to some dog owners who were down there, and we traveled several weeks ago, and the city that we went into, I was bent to go look at dog parks, right? Like what they had. And we get a lot of activity. So I'd really like to understand and go back and revisit the projects that we've taken the time to get the drawings and the pricing on and see what we could do to push those projects forward. Jay knows I shared with him in the past that I support the dog park. I don't support our tax dollars paying for the dog park, but I support having a really nice dog park that all of the communities around the beach could use, and how could we fund that in a way that would be done through grants or donations? They're out there. We're contracting now with a grant writer. Let's collectively put in some effort to businesses or community people who would want to support that. And then I'd like to better understand on the boat docks, why did we not move that forward? I don't really recall. I recall all of the conversations. And then I had another conversation with a business owner at John's Pass who was talking about specifically the docks to go by Don's Dock. Those, why didn't they move forward? There could be really valid reasons, but if they were on our budget at some point, why'd we pull them off? Did we pull them off because the commission that got elected didn't want them? Because the community must have been in support of it, or it would have never made it to the point of getting drawings and having that whole conversation. So that's my thought. I think that they do the work, and it's not fair for them to do the work under a commission and then we just make it go away. So my point is, we're going to move forward with this. This is in the budget. It's something that's being looked at. How about if we go back and look at other projects that they've already put a lot of legwork in and see how do we make those projects come to fruition for the city? Or maybe they shouldn't, and we could go on the record as to why we're not doing it and we're choosing something else. And I'm not saying I'm against the basketball court. That's not what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying.
I'd be happy to do that if you can make it on the next workshop, whatever.
Okay.
Just in brief, I don't want to get too far off topic, but as far as the dog park, I love our library, but it's funded through, and it's used by all our neighboring cities. There's no reason, if we're going to allocate property for a dog park that's also going to be used for all our neighboring cities, that it shouldn't be shared. So I'll put that out.
Yeah.
I mean, we can talk about that at the workshop. Same way with the docks. What does if the residents are going to pay for the docks, what benefit is it to the residents for docks that are less than 2 miles away from their home? So again, would the residents be paying for docks that are used by all the other cities? neighboring cities. But okay, we didn't lose Jay.
Yeah.
The only suggestion I would make on the basketball court is prior to coming to a final design that would be presented to the public, please visit St. Pete Beach, Clearwater, get Brian, talk to him. He's asked to be brought in prior to us doing anything that's going to be bringing in tourism. You may have already done it, but if they're going to allocate tourism dollars and give us grants to substantially benefit building such a facility, he would want to be included in the conversation ahead of time during the design.
Okay, yeah, so, and outside of our Babe Ruth organization that utilizes the field, Visit St. Pete Clearwater is our number 2 tenant, user, whatever, of the facilities. So anytime they're on site for a tournament, just for a check-in, we always walk around and what are these little, like if you guys have been out there, we've got the backstop areas and the netting. And so a lot of those little things we look at and I say, it's got to be able to support the use and amplify the use of the Babe Ruth organization, the children that are out there. But at the same time, what's the tourism aspect? What's the selling point for a group that wants to come use it for a facility?
The only thing I'm suggesting is get an
Yeah,
hour of his time and sit down and show him some plans and
sure.
get his input. Should it be smaller? Should it be bigger? Should it be, how do you see, get their buy-in ahead of time?
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah,
It's hard not to fund something that you were part of.
Right, and for 10 years at least now, prior to Brian joining Visit St. Pete Clearwater, we've been told by them that we need more bathrooms. So that's where this conversation started, and it's growing into something.
Beautiful.
Yes,
Just
we will do that.
Thought I'd mention it. Thanks.
Anything additional? Are we all done? It is 5:16. We're adjourned.